let's start with lesson 5. Format your message to be easy to read. In the lessons that came before, we talked about a planning process for determining your audience, your main point, and your most important message. We also talked about some of the mechanics around your email. So your subject line and some of the other indications in the email that sets the tone that you're going to set for your audience. And then we looked at the sentence level for opportunities to make sure that your writing is clear, concise, and engaging. And here in lesson 5, we're going to look at the formatting of your email to make sure that it's easy to read. So let's start now with lists. Lists are a terrific way to present information to your reader for a number of reasons. Lists are much better than long, dense paragraphs. Research shows, in fact, that long, dense paragraphs are the most difficult way to present information to your reader. So lists are a terrific alternative. Short sentences and short paragraphs are also a great option. So when you're using a list, you're going to use your top theme as the sentence that starts as the introduction, and then you're simply listing your ideas underneath that. Now, your reader, especially if it's a process, will appreciate the information in list form. It makes much easier to follow list information than in paragraph form. And you're also going to reduce your chance of making grammar and punctuation mistakes if you follow these basic guidelines for using lists. So let's start with guideline number 1 for using a list. The first is to make sure you've introduced your list. So here's what it looks like without an introduction. Right? It's a bit confusing, you don't know where we're starting, but with an introduction, your reader of your email can look down, scan the first sentence, and then quickly move through your bullet points. Okay, so include an introduction to your list. The second guideline is to make sure all items belong on the list. You want to make sure that you've done that careful weeding and checking to make sure that all items belong there, that they don't belong in a separate email. Sometimes I see that one of the items ends up in the wrong place, and so you want to make sure yours is consistent. So again, here's a before and an after. Now they all fit. The third is to be consistent with capitalization, fragments, and end punctuation. I would say that this is one of my favorite list guidelines because it really presents an opportunity for most writers to improve the professional look of their lists. So here's an example that is inconsistent. So it starts, some of the bulleted items start with capital letters, but one doesn't. So that's what we're talking about here with capitalization. So be consistent with capitalization. We strongly suggest that you start all of your bulleted or numbered list items with a capital letter. The second issue here is around fragments. Now, it's okay for all of your bulleted items to be fragments, or it's okay to use end punctuation, but you must be consistent. So either choose end punctuation or no end punctuation, but be consistent in your list. Now, there's one situation demonstrated here where you don't have a choice anymore, and that's in the first bullet. Because there's end punctuation already in that bullet, you must use end punctuation in the entirety of that list or change it so that they are all fragments. Again, one of the most important rules around grammar is consistency. So choose the form that you're going to present in and then follow it carefully. So we've revised that example, and here it is in a consistent form. We're unable to meet the original deadline for the following reasons, and then we've started all with capital letters. In this case, we did not choose to use end punctuation, but we've been consistent about that choice. The fourth guideline for using list is around maintaining parallel form. That means that all your items in your list should start with the same type of language. So if you start with a verb, you should start consistently with verbs. And if you start with nouns, you can then start them all with nouns. If you start with verbs, choose the same verb tense. Okay, so in this example, the first one, they are not parallel. It starts with discussion of whether to, and then early retirement policy. So as your readers reading down that list, they're getting a bit confused or at least slowed down. Instead, start with the same, in the same way, in parallel form. So it starts here: discuss, decide, and draft. Okay, that's a great way to present a professional image to your reader, and again, to avoid lots of common grammar and punctuation mistakes. And the fifth is to organize your list. So we like to say that 5 to 7 items is the right number on a list. But if your list starts looking long, you may want to organize your list into shorter lists. So 5 to 7 is about right, but it looks even better if you've organized the list for your reader. So here it is, reorganized into 3 lists that your reader can very easily follow. Okay, so you can apply all these principles, again, to all the writing you do. For example, writing in parallel form helps you maintain consistency in your narrative writing as well as in lists. Organization, of course, is an important concept and application to everything you write as well. So headings are another terrific tool to use in email. For a long time, we thought headings were just appropriate for multi-section reports or proposals. But if you are presenting multi-sections in an email, consider using headings to help your reader navigate through your information. Okay? We tend to prefer headings as opposed to different kinds of emoticons or colors or flashing buttons, underlining. We are of the philosophy that your words should show the importance of your message. If you've run out of ways to get your readers' attention in email and have gone to flashing buttons and emoticons, you may want to go back and evaluate whether email is the right tool for this communication. But headings are a great way to use words to show the importance of the content or information that's coming next. Okay, so headings, again, another transferable skill. Use headings in every document that you write. Proofreading, again, is really important, especially in email, especially when we know that our messages can and often are sent to lots of different people. So having an error or not having proofread a message can be embarrassing not only to your reader, but to all of the extended and perhaps exponential other readers that come in contact with your message. So take the time to proofread. I have an activity here that we can work on together, and it's to revise this email. It's what we call sort of a threaded example. And so we're going to start with a bunch of embedded errors. So it includes lots of the issues we've covered today. Notice the subject line, the ending, the formatting. Maybe you're like me and would prefer anything but a long, dense paragraph. So what could we change here? We've made some highlights. The first thing is we've thought, well, that subject line probably could be more specific, descriptive, concise, and clear, following the guidelines we discussed earlier. And then we thought, well, what other kind of words are there? What other opportunities are there here? The main point is buried at the bottom, by the way. We talked early on about making sure your main point is at the beginning. If you've ever worked in business, you know that your reader is more likely to read the very beginning of your message, but less likely to read the end. So what kind of changes might we make here? We started with, a more clear, concise, a more clear subject line. We also included a call to action. And we took that main point that was buried at the bottom and we moved it up to the beginning. And then we decided to use a list to present our findings. So our list follows those guidelines. It starts in parallel form. It has consistent initial capitalization. It has consistent punctuation. And then we've made sure that we wrapped it up with a closing that restates the purpose for writing. Okay. So as a closing, it would be great if you could take a little scratch piece of paper next to your desk, write down 3 ideas or strategies from today's course that you'll use every time you write an email message. It's a great opportunity while this is all fresh to, again, write down those strategies and also go back and look at a few emails that you wrote. We know that adults learn by looking at job relevant and oftentimes personal examples and activities. So you can download the book that lives in the Academy. You can also go back and take a look through some of your own emails or take a keen look at some of the emails that are coming in probably as we speak and see what you could glean from your colleague's email. If you ever had the chance to give somebody some feedback, what kind of feedback would you give? Okay. So as a recap, pulling it all together, you want to make sure that you take the time to plan your message. Okay, that means thinking about your audience, what they care about, not just what you want to tell them. You want to structure your message, okay, keeping in mind that you have an opportunity around your subject line, openings, closings. You want to use language that is concise and clear. Again, transferable skills. You can use concise and clear language every time, everywhere you write. And make sure you've used formatting techniques that make your message easy to read. Okay, so thank you for joining us today in the Write It Well Academy.